Hi, my name is Lindsay Langstaff, and I'll be doing the annotation for our team L squared B squared deliverable 2. Our project is concussion and traumatic brain injury in pediatric patients. Here you'll see our architectural diagram. Our project is a clinical decision support system, so we felt that building a Smart on Fire app is the most appropriate solution. We are planning on leveraging the Spring MVC framework to build this app as a Java web application. This will allow us to easily share the app with clinicians via the internet and on multiple platforms. On the client side, we will be using JSP and Bootstrap to display the information to the user. The server side will be a combination of controllers and beans, which will utilize the Happy Fire API to retrieve data from an external Fire test server. If we need a local app database, we will use Hibernate. Currently, we would like to implement a CDS hook and an EHR to link the clinician to our app, as well as we'd like to implement several security processes, as we know this is important to the app. But because of time constraints, we're not sure that those things will fit into the scope. Next, you'll see an example of our app homepage as we're starting to envision it. We want a quick, simple view for the physician that tells the patient's story, as well as any previous head injuries, as this app is focused around concussions. This information would hopefully come from the patient's EHR so as to be automatically populated as well as automatically updated. Next, you'll see an example of what the app would display. First, it would collect all information from the patient's EHR, and it might prompt the physician for any information missing. Next, it would prompt questions related to head injuries to give the physician a better understanding of the nature of the incident, the patient's history with head injuries, and give the physician a better chance to immediately diagnose the patient if there is any obvious sign of a physical head injury. Otherwise, the app would proceed to a neuropsychological tool, which we chose based on external research. So when the app proceeds into the tool, there will be a variety of prompts for the physician to get a better feel for the patient's status. Here we've broken down the factors or symptoms into the 3-factor structure: cognitive, somatic, and emotional factors. The physician would ask the patient about several of these factors, asking them to score them on a scale that would define whether the patient is experiencing that particular symptom or not. As we move farther into the project, these factors and their weighted influence will adjust and change. Next, the app would start the diagnosis. A very low score on the neuropsychological tool would indicate that the patient has not had an MTBI, and treatment and recommendations would reflect that. On the other hand, a very high score would indicate a definite MTBI, and treatments and recommendations would reflect that as well. If the score is in the middle, the app might pull more information from the patient's background, history, prompt additional questions, or suggest a computerized cognitive test in an effort to rescore and further diagnose the patient. Once a score is determined, the diagnosis can be made and treatment and recommendations can follow. As the project progresses, we'll further clarify this detail. The idea is to pull together a package based on the patient's score that is composed of the treatments and recommendations on the next slide. And here we see the treatments for patients and families, as well as treatments for symptoms and problems. These range anywhere from the recommendation of when to return to school to traumatic headache management. This app could also suggest further testing, including imaging if needed. And finally, the app would package this information and deliver it back to the patient's EHR and the parent or guardian. The idea here is to make sure it's captured in the EHR, and also that if the child's condition was to worsen, the parent or guardian could easily look into the child's score from the physician's office, make an educated decision on whether the score was increasing, and take appropriate action. It would also allow them to refresh their memory on the physician's treatments and recommendation, and all of the information presented up until this point has been reviewed by and has the support from our external mentor. So lastly, here our Gantt chart is shown with additional details since it was last presented. Over to the right are our next steps for the next 2 weeks, including setting up development environments, initial project setup, developing risk algorithms and test cases, front-end and back-end software drafts, Happy Fire development, and local database setup, as well as, of course, remaining in close contact with our external mentor to ensure we stay on track with their expectations. Thank you.